cyber attack. We both of us being part of the Commanders Club of Michigan, and we can even share what that is exactly. But having somebody come on and did a speech in front of our club, talking about the cyber attack, and what he said is one of the things that really was concerning is being part of Michigan is if they attack and they do some kind of attack and we shut things down. He says within 2 weeks of a cyber attack, we could be like starvation.
If they shut down the grid, you mean?
Right,
yeah.
Grid. And then he was talking also about the locks, the Sioux locks up in Michigan, and they said if they did anything to destroy that or damage that or an attack, a terrorist attack, he said that within a couple weeks, Michigan we wouldn't be able to put food on the shelves. So that was kind of concerning, and I'm thinking to myself, that's really close into Michigan, right? I mean, you feel so protected. I feel, honestly, I'm over here in West Michigan.
Right.
I'm not going on, and I don't, I read it, and you see it on TV. But to have somebody stand in front of you and just saying certain parts of things in Michigan that could be taken out, just like that, with cyber and a terrorist attack, and how it could affect our country, our state, I meant to say. I mean, what are your thoughts on, are we doing enough to protect ourselves from cyber attacks? Because they talk about them all the time now, that we're not. But what are you can't answer a lot because you were in the Navy, and that maybe not be, David goes, don't ask him too many questions like that. But
well, that's a lot of questions.
I am concerned because I am American, and I am worried about stuff like this.
Well, I think you should be. You should be informed on it.
Okay.
I don't think we're as vulnerable here as we are in a lot of places. I lived in 15 years of my Navy career. I lived in San Diego, California. Beautiful place, right?
Right.
Has no water. None. Right? It all has to come in from somewhere else. Los Angeles is the same way. It all has to come in from Colorado and Northern California. You talk about vulnerable population centers that have no resources. None.
Right.
It's all coming from somewhere else. So, relatively speaking, we've got an abundance of water. We've got a pretty good. We don't have a huge population center in the sense like we do in a lot of these other places in the country. But yeah, losing the grid's a problem, right? So I'm not saying we should go full, Michigan militia survivalist or anything, but I want my second well pump to be pumpable, so I can get water from the well, because I actually have a second well pump, so I'm going to make that one so that I can use it by hand if I lose electricity.
Right.
Be good to have a gas generator that can keep you powered up with minimum equipment if you were off the grid for a while, right? If you really want to scare yourself, you can read a book called 1 Second After. I think that's what it's called. That I read last summer about 2 high-altitude nuclear detonations over the United States that released electromagnetic pulses that shut down the grid and provided the scenario you're talking about.
Right.
I did some research as I read through that book, and everything in it I don't think is quite right, but a lot of it certainly is, and of course that did cause a lot of starvation because basically the major food supplies can't get where they need to go if the grid's down.
Right.
So there may be a lot of cattle, but they're nowhere near you, and therefore, you're not getting anything. So things like cell phones. Your cell phone actually typically would survive an EMP pulse, and would be in most cases would be okay. However, the cell tower. I just got it. It's brand new. It's a 10. Yeah. Well, because I had a 5.
You have a 10?
I had a 5, and my boss finally looked at me and says, "You're 5 generations ago. You're like you belong in a museum." So I finally guilted me. I got one.
How are you liking it?
It's good. It's just too big. I liked the smaller one.
Yeah, I know. He did. Yeah. I was always every time you pulled out your phone, I'm thinking, that's a really small phone.
yeah. I liked the smaller phone.
Okay.
But your phone would survive an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. Unfortunately, the tower would get fried. So your phone's not going to work. I mean, you can be able to play games on it or something until the battery dies, but the cell network will go down, for example.
So you won't be able to use like GPS or anything?
No,
Chiquita Joseph is talking behind us here. She's a
GPS would, the satellites would still be up, well, unless they were affected by it, they would still be up there transmitting, and they should be unaffected. But would your receiver be able to pick it up? Maybe it's fried, maybe it's not. Depends on if the electromagnetics are fried. Most cars, because the modern circuitry in the cars would be fried. Any older car, like my 1996 Land Rover, would be fine. Right?
Good.
So, so there's a reason to keep the old beast.
Exactly.
But
I don't
then
know if mine would.
cyber in general, though, I mean, just basic stuff. Does your phone geotag every picture you take? Are your pictures, can your pictures say where you were when you took the picture, or do you have that disabled? Are you sharing stuff with everybody, or who are you sharing it with? What are all your privacy settings on?
There is some great technology. I like that.
That's right. There's some incredibly empowering
picture. Oh yeah, I was
stuff
aware.
that can also make you quite vulnerable.
I know.
If somebody wants to target you, so you got to balance that out, and you should at least understand the decisions you're making and why you're making them, and what your vulnerabilities are. Do you use two-factor authentication? Do you have not just log into your bank account remotely? It's so convenient. Do you make yourself also get the text to prove it's you? To prove it's you. Face ID. Now you can just grab my head and put me up to the phone and unlock my phone.
I know.
Right? Do I want to enable Face ID or not? You just got to think through these things.
I do. I try to think. If I think too much through,
You can't sleep at night.
I can't think. I mean, okay, so that's a big thing when you were married. You and Laura. When you came home. I mean, I couldn't even compare my day to what your day was like. I mean, I was home. I did this. I painted a few. And what'd you do? Well, I'm out there, saving America, and I, made a decision that's got,
Actually,
did she laugh at that? It's like, how do I compare my life to yours?
That's really not a problem generally. I mean, when you're in a staff job, everything's classified. You come home, you're not talking about anything, right? So it's all. You're just done.
Well, yeah,
so there's none of this. How was your day?
Well, you know what I mean.
Downloading
I saw Bob
your day.
or whatever.
I just don't have that habit pattern of downloading my day. I never have, because in most cases you can't even talk about it anyway.
Yeah, does that become a problem too? Because we get when our husbands show up, we can get rather chatty. Especially Laura being out, being an artist, and she's not with a bunch of staff people.
I'm happy to hear about her day. I
Yeah,
just don't typically
but she's got 10,000
my
words,
day.
and you're going to hear it all too.
She doesn't talk quite as much as you do.
She's trained herself, So, I go, David walks in the door, and I'm like, okay, it starts to go off. Okay, all right, so let's talk about the next generation. As the new generation is coming, I mean, what would you like? The military is not really being promoted. It is, you see it, but I saw it a lot more when I was younger. And people talked about it. People came in, they discussed it with us at school. There was all kinds of things. What are to bring in people into the military, which I think they should promote that. What should you be telling the new generation, the next, or Shakidra, who's just going to get her degree? I guess she has her degree, but
they do market to us. It's
they
not
do.
That they don't. Like the U.S. Navy reached out to me last year to come to use my biochemistry degree to.
Well, yeah.
Bombs, and I said I think that's a young world character. But I would think about it. But they do reach out. They are in every university that you can think of
good.
across the United States. You have the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy that are present. If I was to choose, I would go to the Air Force, but
But the only thing I was concerned when I was when they did approach, one of my kids was the rule of engagement issue that we talked about this.
Yeah.
That was one of the things family members discouraged him to go into the military because they were afraid of one decision that he could make that could have huge consequences. But nobody can be where they're at when they're making those decisions with everything, and what they've dealt with in the past. Like maybe they've dealt with a situation that it turned out where they didn't react fast enough. You know what I mean? And one of their buddies were killed, or they're. So what are your thoughts on people who are like, well, the rules of engagement is terrible today, and I wouldn't have my kid go into the military and make a decision that's going to possibly 5 years down the road have consequences. And is that still a concern?
Yeah, it's all. I mean, the rules of engagement, the ROE, are always a hotly debated set of rules prior to any conflict you're going to engage in, and they're usually prescriptive towards that specific theater for various reasons. So it's always an issue. I think since 9/11, the ROE has opened up considerably. You can still make mistakes, right?
Right.
You can still have judgment errors. It's like you're asking police officers to do that all the time, right? You're asking doctors to do that. You're asking all kinds of folks to make good decisions, time-critical decisions, judgments, with sometimes incomplete information, and you do the best you can to give them the rules required to be effective without being a problem. So, for example, a standard ROE sort of thing would be that if you hit me with a spitball, I can't run you over with my car, right?
Well,
so,
yeah,
So the
those are
rules of
just-
engagement have to be proportional. They have to be.
Right.
They have to be as moral as you can make war, right? So all these things that we do, our adversaries don't always do it the way. Their ROE is different, right? Often considerably different. So for many, many years before we'd gotten back into any kind of real conflict, we did have quite restrictive ROE in general.
Okay.
Certainly at sea. When you look at the USS Cole, which was bombed in 1998, Kirk Lippold, the CO of that ship, had very few tools to defend his ship properly. Very few.
Okay.
We've got quite a few more now, and we've got quite a bit more liberal ROE, and there's a much better chance that a captain who shot at something to defend his ship, his or her ship, would be backed up. You never know till it happens, because you could be hung out to dry. You just never know. Depends on the circumstances.
And that's what we see, because a lot of
yeah.
our information comes from people, movies, and which is not always a great thing. But and then other people's
Movies
stories.
is almost never correct. Almost. I mean, it's kind of too bad, because you get all kinds of things in your head that kind of subliminally become sort of true when they're not even close, right?
Right.
Movies do that all the time, unfortunately. They didn't used to. That's kind of why I like old movies. A lot of them are actually quite a bit more accurate to history, which I like. And that's not universally true, but a lot of them are.
Well,
But just kids in general coming to the military, we're still getting very talented folks. I used to get asked a lot about millennials or Gen Xers or whatever. They're all very talented, very sharp young men and women.
No, I'm glad, and I believe most of them I have with me are pretty talented, but I am happy they're going into the military and serving our country, and there still is they want to, right? I think a lot of people would like to have a mission, a purpose, and if you can use their talents in our military forces, this is great, right? So, all right, so.
Do you think that the increase in suicide rate is due to PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder from people who go over to countries where we are in war and they're killing certain people? Because I have a friend where he does have PTSD and he has battled suicidal thoughts before because he had to kill a child because it was either it was his life or that child's life, and that child was literally about to kill him. So do you think that's why we see an increase, more so of an increase with suicide?
PTSD is a new term, right, in the last, I don't know how many years, 10 maybe, somewhere in there. I think you could have called it that after World War II, right?
Right.
It's the same. It's the same thing. Battle shock, we used to call it different things. But yeah, and we alluded to it earlier in the discussion, I think, where you can't go to these foreign countries, these foreign places, these far sides of the world, and even if you're not shooting anybody, and just see the conditions they live under, see what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis just to survive and not be affected by it when you come back. You just can't. Decompressing is something we're all confronted with. And unfortunately, if you really had a bad set of facts, a bad set of circumstances where you were forced to hurt somebody and had some guilt about it, whether you were justified or not, well, that's going to weigh on you, of course, even more, right? So all these things are difficult to adjust to. I think the suicide rate in the military is higher than the general population. I don't know how significantly. I'd have to research that. And I don't know that the numbers are going up necessarily. I'm not sure that that's correct. You may see that they spiked one year and then went back down the next. I don't know if there's a significant trend in any direction.
We're just hearing more about it, I think, and then people, like I said, the lady that's in my woman. I mean,
no, they're just too high, period, right? And firearm fatalities are too high, car fatalities are too high, even against improve safety standards in a lot of these areas. So,
Well, we just, we were downtown. I was going to share with you downtown with David's with credit union people all over the country and coming in. But they're concerned. They're really, I mean, I want to talk about really quickly before you leave. You know, they're concerned about what's happening in California and in Seattle and those countries where they're just, they said what's happening is they're just dropping off people from, you know, from foreign countries. You know what I mean? They're just what do you call it? Immigrants. And they're just dropping them off of the bus loads. And he goes, it's really the city is really changing quickly. And being an American citizen, I know we have rules, Tom. We have laws you have to go through and whatever. And the military is supposed to correct our borders. But if they're being dropped, these people are being dropped off. We have no idea who they are, what they're capable of. I feel that that's kind of an invasion. And for at least would be me if I just saw people just dropping off people that have no direction. Say, you guys just take care of them. It's your city. We're just gonna, you know. And so anyway, so what some of these cities are doing, they're busing them back to Seattle because Seattle's doing this, and they go, but you haven't. The Seattle has changed so much that it's sad. And what are your thoughts on? And if you can share with us, you know, what is the role of the military to protect us? Our borders when this is happening. I mean, is it something you just kind of like, well, just ignore that? You can't ignore that.
No, but it's really not the role of the military
To protect the borders. So what?
No, it is absolutely their job to protect the borders from foreign invasion.
Well, what do we call this?
Hostile foreign invasion, right? Absolutely, that's our job. Our job is not to police the borders. In fact, we're expressly prohibited from doing that. The Posse Comitatus Act prevents us from doing police work.
Okay.
In the military, without specific exceptions.
So it's the state?
Part of why the Coast Guard's so fascinating. They have a Title X Defense of the Country charter, and they also have a police charter. They actually can operate under both, but the military can't in general. So, so can they be called out in certain ways? Yes, but generally speaking, those kind of national or those kind of regional emergencies are generally more appropriate for the state governors to use their
Homeland Security or anybody wouldn't be involved in any of this?
Sorry?
Homeland Security or anybody wouldn't be involved in just dropping off?
No, Homeland Security is all involved, right? It's all their business, but nobody in the military works for Homeland Security.
Right.
We work for the Department of Defense.
Okay.
But when you say drop off, like, are you meaning as in they're busing people and they're illegally dropping them off, or are you talking about refugees? Because we do have an influx of refugees coming to the United States. So yes, you may see that. It doesn't mean that they're dropping them off illegally. Most of the time, those refugees are coming in through organizations. We can say
No, it's not.
like
It's nothing legal. They're just dropping them
off.
off, and they're dealing with them, and they're just wandering. There's no direction to where they're not going anywhere. It's like they're living under things or under the highways, things like that. That's happening. So it's not like it's an organized situation. So that's what they're saying. And I know that has nothing to do with what you did. But I'm just saying, when I'm listening to all this going on, I'm going, oh my gosh, does anybody? It's quite scary that nobody said, you know what? We need to slow this down and we need to figure this out and how this is going to work. And there's a process, and there is a process. We all know that. But if I was living in Seattle, in Spokane, and all those, and I was dealing with this, I would be going, I would look to I'd be saying, where's Homeland Security? We don't know if these people have been, what they're bringing in, if they've been vaccinated, you know what I mean? We don't know if they're healthy. We just don't know anything, and then they're wandering. So I feel like that stuff is happening. These little things are happening, and we're just kind of like ignoring it, and then we're worried about the big enemies out there, right? The big problems of the world.
I mean, that's a classic debate: is why are we out defending ourselves in Afghanistan when we should be taking care of our own country, right? So that's a common debate, right?
Right.
The
it's the way we've always been doing
isolationist
it,
versus
yes.
the expansionist view of things, and I can't argue with you in this particular example.
Right.
And I couldn't argue with you in the Afghanistan example, as we talked about early on. In other cases, it's quite a little bit different, right? So China is a world power that we need to be concerned about, because they could dramatically alter the whole balance of how things happen in the Pacific and the Western Pacific, including trade, right? So for many, many years we thought, well, we're inextricably linked with China due to our economic ties, and it wouldn't make any sense to get into a fight. That's true, but it doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And not everybody's
so,
our friend,
yeah,
and not everybody wants the best for us, and
yeah.
like to kind of knock us out because we have been the superpower.
Right. So
what
that's
is our role in the world then, today,
Well, so
as of today?
Well, so you have to decide, is it worth us spending our time and treasure overseas, or is it not? And so I think in China, it's something we really have to be concerned about. Iran has just bombed, what, 4 tankers in the Straits of Hormuz in the last 3 weeks? The Prime Minister of Japan was visiting Tehran, trying to calm things down. On his way home, 2 of the tankers headed to Japan got mined.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So we're looking for a dust up. We're looking at a dust up in Iran if we're not careful. And I don't know what this president's going to do, but you know, I can imagine a few options. And how much time and effort do we want to put against something like that? In our case, if you want to be very selfish, we don't really get much oil from the Persian Gulf anymore here in the United States. Europe and Japan do.
Right.
So we could just say, well, that's your problem.
Will
we do that, or will we do what we've often done, which is act as kind of the global leader and move out to do something else?
Can we continue to do that though? And the cost, the cost, and then seeing that it's really, it's just like we just put a Band-Aid on something and it's coming down. And I know there's always going to be problems, but it just seems like it's been never with Iraq going on for 20 years. I mean, how long?
Right.
How long do we say? All right, but I know it will affect us if we get out of it at this point. And then I feel bad for all the people that have sacrificed over those years and that come home and they're injured and stuff like that and say, well, we just decided that we're not even going to call it a war anymore. You know what I mean? We're just going to say because it was 20 years of. But is that what wars are going to be? Kind of our future? It's going to be lasting instead of 4 to 5 years. We're looking at 20 years. It's a long time.
We after we had our bad experience in Vietnam, right?
Right.
It was a very long time before we put our foot in the water again.
Right.
So, you know, I'm sure this will help us balance our thinking going into the future. We'll see. But I mean, I agree with you on the border security thing. I mean, it's just crazy, and that's why I just encourage people to find things you can read that you think give you a balanced view of things, and even things you agree with, try and be critical of them, because we got to find a way to talk to each other. I mean, you know, President Clinton was talking about immigration being a problem. President Obama was talking about it being a problem.
Right.
Now President Trump's talking about it, and lots of folks seem to just not want to listen on principle because they don't like the president, and therefore, I don't care if you're saying something all previous administrations have agreed with.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I hate you. I won't listen to you. Well, that's not helpful.
Right. Okay, so what do you want to leave us with today? How can we support the, I mean, you've been in the military. How can us Americans, like Street Cajun, how can we support the military and show that we're behind you? And we really, you know, we love what we're glad you're there. How's that? That you're doing what you're doing.
I think we do now. I mean, I think Vietnam soldiers coming home, you know, they came back to an America that didn't want them.
Right,
you know,
a mess,
and so I think we've learned that lesson finally after Desert Storm, after the first Iraq War. We really got our act together and realized that we should be blaming the policymakers, not the soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. I think that's right.
Right.
You know, I might not agree with you, Mr. and Mrs. President, whoever, but you know, I'm wearing the uniform today, and I signed up to do this. I'll go do it. It ain't the soldiers' fault. It really isn't.
No.
It's a policymaker's fault, and oftentimes we get policymakers who are we elected them, but they're overzealous or they're over-agendized, and they go off and do things.
And we're polarized from both sides. So you're looking at what do we do? You know, someone's you know what I'm saying? It's just every 4 years we could experience a whole new. You know, you just start getting your bearings, and then 4 years or 8 years later, you have a whole new administration, and it starts with a whole different agenda and stuff. Tell me, I was going to ask you, what have you learned over, you know, being the captain and being the leader over 5,000 people? What are the few things that you could say that you've really taken away?
Stay humble.
Okay.
Right, be willing to admit that you know you've made a mistake. Always empower your people, right? So you cannot run a ship like that, even close to by yourself, right? You have to find ways to empower your folks, inspire them, give them the direction you want to go and why, and then let them go make you proud, right? And if you can do that well, you can be successful. If you can't, if you're just constantly micromanaging every detail, then you're just never going to get there.
Well, that's the key today was decision and leadership. That's huge, making decisions real quickly, and then leadership, right? The leadership skills. I mean, did as a leader yourself, I mean, did you notice people that had that quality right away, or is it something that it's really can you train a leader such to be yourself, or did you you know?
Yeah, some of it's natural, but I mean, what I always say is I'm learning about leadership every day. You may have, let's say there are 8 tools in your toolbox. Well, your leadership style is you love the wrench, and the wrench is, you know, you get in there right alongside the person and you're right there with them. You are an absolute teammate. That's a good leadership style. Lead by example, right? I'm going to go do this. I'm going to follow it with you. But it ain't always the right one, right? Sometimes you need the screwdriver, the hammer or something. You just need to step on something because folks aren't doing things that need to be done. You've made the standard clear. You've set your expectations. You've explained why. You've put all the things in place for them to be successful, and they're still not moving where they do what they need to do. You may not like the hammer. It may not be your favorite leadership style. Maybe it make you very uncomfortable. Still need to occasionally know how to use the hammer, right? So all those various ways that you lead and motivate and inspire people, you're not going to be good at all of them. You're going to naturally be okay at a few of them. You can get better at those, but then you need to learn about the others. You need to be able to get into a tense conversation without, bubbling up.
Exactly.
Even though you don't like it, even though you're not comfortable with it. You need to be able to speak to a crowd, even though maybe you're shy. All those things.
We've talked about that.
So
being
all
in
these styles,
Toastmasters.
all these styles are different, and you're not going to be good at naturally at all of them. So you're going to have to work at some of them.
Yeah, you will. And then so now that you've been out of the military, but we'll finish this up. How you feel? How do you like? Do you like being? Do you miss it, or do you like being in where you're at? Or
I love West Michigan. Thrilled to get out here.
We have West Michigan. We are blessed.
I actually was born in Southeast, but when I retired, I decided to come out this way because I didn't really want to go back to Southeast. And the art community really allowed me to draw my wife out. The thought of coming up to the cold here in Michigan, because she's from Virginia.
I know it. We'd like her to stay.
So we got this great place. It's it's on 5 acres. Yet I can be downtown in 10 minutes, whereas in Washington D.C. I could get 5 acres and be downtown in an hour and a half. Right. So.
Yeah. So West Michigan's great, and we're glad to have you.
It is great.
Anything else you want to leave with to say to your neighbors out there?
Oh, well, I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible there, West Michigan. I hope there's a time where we can get together. It's great to be out here. I love this part of the state. I was born and raised in Michigan, gone for 30 years, always wanted to come back. It was always in my grand plan.
Really?
Thought maybe just a cabin or something, but I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. So.
Enjoy a great cigar together. We have becoming friends. Oh, there's the phone. Okay. And we wish you all the success on getting us more icebreaker ships and things like that for our nation. All right. This is Pamela Kine from Grand Tap Media. We want to thank Captain Thom Burke for being with us today. And we're going to say goodbye. And we'll see you next time on Breathe in the Grand Show. Take care, everyone.